Coach Corey Wayne, and this is my video coaching newsletter. And the topic of this newsletter is going to be, you want to break up with me? Well, that's definitely not something you want to say to your girlfriend or your wife or somebody that you're dating. Guys that say that are just asking for the woman to break up with them. And I got an email here from a viewer who pretty much did just that. But before we get into it, I got a quote that I wrote on this topic, and I'm going to go through it and then we're going to jump right into his email. And the quote says, "You get what you focus on in life. What you focus on will expand. If you are focusing on what you are fearful about, or what you fear may not work out for you in the future, your actions will bring about what you fear. If you see the positive in every experience and always look for the gift and silver lining in everything that happens to you, you will take more efficient actions that will eventually manifest what you really want. Where intention goes, energy flows. When you change the way you look at things, the things you look at, focus on, and experience in life will change. Don't focus on what's not working. Instead, focus on what you want to create and what actions you must take right now to manifest your desires and dreams." So let's jump into this guy's email. He says, "Dear Coach, my girlfriend of 5.5 years just dumped me. I'm 50 and she's 43. Things have been rocky for several months. She started treating me with a lack of courtesy and respect. I stood up for myself and this caused conflict." Well, when a woman becomes bitchy and she starts becoming nasty and she starts trying to walk all over you, when a woman becomes bitchy, it's always in direct proportion to how the guy is showing up. In other words, if he's not acting like the leader, if he's not acting strong, if he's not courting her properly, if he's not acting like the charming leader of the relationship that she fell in love with, she's going to become bitchy. Because what's happening is, when the guy's not in his masculine, he's not being the leader, it forces the woman to move into her masculine, which is obviously not her natural essence, and they resent it. They don't like it. He says, "It was our second split. We originally lived together for 2 years, broke up, and were apart for a couple of months, then got back together. I never moved back with her, which was her choice, and I slept over once a week. The second stretch lasted 3 years. Well, it definitely sounds like the level of intimacy that you guys had was not there when you guys got back together. He said, for the first couple of years, it was a difficult arrangement, but one that I grew comfortable with. So in other words, you became compliant. Her behavior changed at New Year's. She became neurotic and unhappy and began clearing out her furniture and decorations. I soon felt like I was being swept out of her life too. There were no fatal indiscretions, i.e. cheating, lying, physical abuse, etc., although tensions sparked for the smallest of reasons. Sounds like she was looking for reasons to pick a fight, to have like one big blowout fight so there could be a breakup. A lot of women will do that. They'll pick a fight and then have a big blowout, big blow-up fight, and then the relationship's over then. He says, "We had an unresolved argument and hadn't talked in several days. She called early Saturday morning, distraught, sounding angry and impulsive, and telling me she was thinking of breaking up. Well, she says something like that. Say, baby, well, I'm sorry you feel that way, but you know what? There is nothing that you and I can't figure out together. So let's get together. Why don't you grab a bottle of wine, come on over to my place, and we can talk and make dinner together and figure this out. I adore you, I love you, and I know we can figure this out. Come on over." And then you make a date. You always want to be the guy that never lets anything diminish you. The worst thing you can do is get into a fearful state, get angry, start arguing, using logic and reason to try and win your argument. Because if you do that, you're always going to lose. Even if you win the argument or think you won the argument, you're still going to lose. I mean, remember, the whole purpose of a relationship is you're there to give. You go there to give. You're there to help each other grow and become more. You either grow together with somebody or you grow apart with them. You're there to meet each other's needs. It's figuring out what she needs, her knowing what you need, and both of you working to meet each other's needs because you love each other and you want to give to each other unconditionally. It's not about winning points or one-upping the other person. I got a friend of mine who's been with his wife almost 20 years now, and they got 3 kids. And I remember several years ago when we were chatting, he's only had about 7 arguments with her the whole time that they've been together. And both of them have the same attitude. They came from good families where the mom and dad were together and had a healthy relationship. And because their attitude is like, why should we argue? We're a team. We're in it together. We're in it to win it, if you will. We're here to meet each other's needs. So what is it you need to feel loved and supported? He says, from the tone in her voice, I deduced that meant she'd already made the decision, i.e., you already gave up. You assumed that you had already lost. Think about your thinking here, the way you're approaching it. But I didn't tell her that. I listened passively, remained calm. She told me she felt guilty that she couldn't make me happy. Well, it tells me that there were things that were pissing you off about her that you were unhappy with, and you were arguing, or maybe you were trying to change about her. He says, I told her we were having problems, but that I loved her, and I knew she still loved me. She promptly agreed, I do. She told me she would call the following day on Sunday, and then I wrote her an email in the meantime asking her to not make a hasty decision, to take time to breathe, and reassuring her we would work through it. Well, the email is really unnecessary. What you're doing is you're starting to over-pursue at this point because you're fearful she's going to dump you. And now this is what I call the illusion of action, trying to do something to potentially prevent the breakup. James Bond would have the attitude, hey baby, we can work this out. We'll figure it out together. He's not going to be sending an email that basically says, oh, please don't break up with me. Please, please, please keep me around. It doesn't help your case when you do that. Besides, these are things, especially if there's a problem in your relationship, you should be communicating face-to-face in person, not through text or email or over the phone. He says, I was understanding, fair, and reasonable, i.e., I was all in my head, Corey, and I was using logic and reason to try to win my case. A bad way to go. Because when a guy uses logic and reason to try to win an argument or solve a problem, all it makes her feel like is that you don't understand her, you don't understand where she's coming from, and you don't care about her needs and her wants. I talk about this extensively in my book. I also did a video several years ago called How to Communicate with Women Effectively. You should definitely watch that, and you should definitely read the latter half of the book when I talk about communication. Because the worst thing you could do in a relationship is trying to argue with a woman. You got to understand where she's coming from. You got to walk in her shoes and look through her eyes and try to see what she sees and feel what it is that she's feeling. She didn't call back until today, which was Tuesday, saying she wanted to get together. We met and we sat on a park bench. She was trembling and crying. So it's like she meets in neutral ground. Again, I would have invited her to come over to your place and make some dinner together. Hang out, have fun, and hook up. But instead, it's just like this big dramatic parting of ways. He says, after a small chat, she went silent. I asked if she read my email. She replied, yes. I said, well, you brought me out to say something. Silence again. I spoke for her. Never assume. Never ever do that. He says, I spoke for her. Do you want to break up with me? You're just asking for her to dump you, dude. I mean, there's no confidence in that statement. It's like you wrote her this email saying, hey, we can work out everything out, no problem. And she shows up and you're already, all right, I know you want to break up with me. Okay, it's all over. You're completely giving up. You're waving the white flag saying, okay, I'm out of the picture. She nodded affirmingly. I said that made me very sad and asked if there was a chance she would reconsider. She said no. I asked if there was another romantic interest. She said no, and I believe her. She was a mess, whereas I was calm and tried to lighten the somber mood. There was no kicking and screaming. I told her that if she wasn't prepared to work things out, then that there was nothing I could say to change her mind and that I was resigned to it being over. I wished her the best, saying I was moving on but would leave the door open. She wanted to explain her reasons for the breakup. I told her that if the decision was final, then the reasons were unnecessary. Well, see, you're not letting her talk. She has some things she wanted to communicate to you, but you're like, nah, talk to the hand because the face ain't listening. You didn't want to listen. That's part of your problem. You don't listen. And if I was talking to her, she'd say, yeah, he doesn't listen to me. He doesn't understand me. He says, I delicately drew the conversation to a close. We never got to the let's just be friends part. I said that I would contact her in a few days to return her belongings, and she wanted a goodbye kiss. I gave her a hug instead, telling her I'd reserve a kiss for the day that she got back together with me. All right. He says, I didn't tell her I loved her, but I looked her in the eye, touched my heart, and told her I missed her already. She was sobbing, looked crushed and surprised, and possibly even annoyed at my emotional calm and resignation at the suddenness of it. Well, part of the problem is that you're not congruent with your words. You sent her this email saying, hey, we can work it out, baby. And then you show up in person and you're waving the white flag before anything even came out of her mouth. So it's like you did the breaking up. He says it was over in 10 minutes. I walked away by myself slowly through a playing field and never looked back. She remained in her car for a duration of I don't know how long. I was gone. Corey, I still love her and I want her, but I will not grovel or chase her to get her back. Well, that's a good state of mind to be in. So understanding I want to reconcile with her, here are my questions. Number one, I was lucky to get a second chance. Do you think her giving me a third is realistically possible? I don't know, dude. Flip a coin. It's hard to tell. He says, should I have listened to her reasons for the breakup? Absolutely. Should I have then complied with her request for a kiss? If you wanted to kiss her, you should have kissed her. And if you didn't want to kiss her and instead wanted to give her a hug, that's what you were willing to do. But the bottom line is, in that moment, it sounds like you did what you wanted, which is a good thing. A man should do what he pleases. He should never be doing something based upon hoping to get a woman's approval. That's the important thing to understand. He says, number three, how should I handle the exchange of our belongings in a few days? Your help and advice is greatly appreciated. Thank you. Well, what I would do is call her, text her in a few days, whatever, and just say, hey, when do you want to come get your stuff? How do you want to, when do you want to get together and do that? Or when are you free to come get your things? I really don't want to break up, but if that's what you still want to do, then we can arrange you picking up your things. And if she says, well, I'm not sure, I'm confused, then what I would say is, well, baby, let's get together and talk about it over dinner. When are you free? And invite her over, tell her to bring a bottle of wine, make dinner together, and this time actually listen to what she has to say. Remember, it's all about meeting each other's needs. And if you're not communicating with her, if you're just making assumptions and filling in the blanks, she's going to feel like you don't care about her opinions and you don't care about her feelings because you're unwilling to listen to them. And you didn't go into detail about what the things you were arguing about, but the bottom line is what I know is that men who understand women never ever argue with them. Period. End of story. There is never a situation where arguing is acceptable. You can agree to disagree on certain things, but the bottom line is you're there to meet each other's needs. And if you don't communicate in a way that women need to communicate, because remember, it's like you mentioned that you had something that was like an unresolved argument earlier in your email. And what you got to realize about women is that when they bring up the same thing over and over again, like if something happened 2 years ago, and it's like every time things aren't going well, or maybe you get into an argument, they bring up something that happened 2 years ago, and you're thinking, what the fuck? We resolved this 2 years ago. Why the fuck is she bringing it up now? Women talk when they're trying to communicate by using relational examples. In other words, the reason she's bringing up something that happened several years ago or an unresolved argument is what she's trying to communicate to you is whatever you're doing now that's upset her or hurt her, what she's trying to communicate is that your actions and your words are hurting her in the same exact way that you did 2 years ago, whenever it was that you did that hasn't been resolved. That's why they keep bringing those things up. She's trying to communicate, you basically did the same thing to me that hurt me in the same way. That's why she brings it up. It's not that the argument was unresolved from a couple of years ago. It's that the way you're going about, the way she's trying to communicate. Most guys hear that and they go in a logic and reason mode trying to win the argument. Trying to say, hey, well, we resolved this 2 years ago. Why are you bringing it up now? And she's like, you're not listening. Of course I'm listening. I'm right here. That's how a typical guy handles it. Again, if I were you, what I would do is review the video that I did called How to Communicate with Women Effectively, and also go back and reread all of the areas of communication that I talk about that are in the last 1/3 of my book, and apply those things. But like I said, when you contact her in a few days about the personal belongings and returning those to her, just say, hey, I know I told you I'd contact you about getting all your things back to you, but quite frankly, I really don't want to do that. It makes me really sad. I would really much rather you and I get together and talk about this over dinner and just have fun. When are you free to get together? Presuppose that she really wants to work it out. She wanted to kiss you. There's a reason she wanted to kiss you. She didn't really want to break up. But the bottom line is you said one thing, that you wanted to work things out, but then when you actually got together in person, all you wanted to do was talk about breaking up. So therefore, in her mind, you were giving up on her and your relationship. You ended up breaking up with her even though that's not what you wanted, because you're assuming and presupposing that it's unsalvageable. Well, where was the confident guy that sent the email the night before that, hey, we can work this out, it's no big deal, we'll figure it out, baby. You and I against the world, we'll figure this out together. That's the guy that you need to be. And that's personally how I would handle the situation if I were you. And for any of you guys that are watching this, don't ever fucking suggest breaking up. Ever. Even if you know that's probably what she's thinking, don't ever do that. Never, ever, ever suggest breaking up. It's one of the worst things that you can absolutely do in that particular situation. So if you'd like to get my help personally, the quickest way is to book a paid phone, Skype, or email coaching. You can choose any of those options by going to my website, clicking the products tab, which will be at the top of your screen, and just follow the instructions. And I will talk to you soon.